Hello ladies and gentlemen, yes, Exiled here just to bring you a quick tutorial on how to put together a Balisong kit. So first things first, you're going to need a workstation. I like to lay out some felt or some cloths just so I have a place where I won't lose screws. A bright color is best so you can see all the little bits easily. Also, you're going to need the Balisong kit itself. All the kits are different, and I have a very complicated kit here, which you will see is a bit harder to assemble than some, but it will give you every step just in case you need it. You also need some hex keys, a hammer. I like to get 2 sets of hex keys, one Canadian, one American, and also as many torque spits as you can find. A little screwdriver that has torque spits is also ideal. Next, you're going to need a cloth, or sorry, some thread lock here, just in order to actually get everything to stay in place. I actually recommend getting high strength. It's also good to remove your cat from the workstation, or else you will, like me, end up losing one screw. Or fortunately, it was not a very important screw. The cloth is just to protect the blade while you work with it, and of course you have all the niggly bits there. Okay, next step. The next step in the process is inserting the pins. This can be a tiny bit difficult, but it is fairly easy even with simple gear. So here I just have a C-clamp and the pins. As you can see, one is already inserted. I actually recommend putting them in the reverse order that I did, so you don't have so much of the blade hanging off the table. As little as possible. It would have helped a lot if I had been able to clamp it further forward. The cloth on the top and the bottom is just to protect the actual blade itself, and it can take a fair bit of hammering. If things go badly, you can hammer the pin all the way through. It is a bit of an issue. The pin will always be a bit looser, but it is still very firm if you just hammer it back in the other way. Worst case scenario, you just have to order another pin. Very easy to deal with. I'm going to fast forward through the rest of the process so you can see it get done. As you can see, it does actually take me a little while here, and I have to occasionally reclamp it, readjust the clamp, do some more hammering, get in the way of the camera. It slips off, but as you can see at the very end there, I have 2 pins. They are very solid and they don't wiggle even if I push on them. The next step is installing the blade. It's actually important to do this immediately after putting the pins in, because it makes it much easier to put the rest of the gear in, and putting the blade in later is very, very difficult. So as you can see, I've already arranged everything so that I have the lock, or the safety handle on the right side and the bite handle on the right side. The safety handle is the one that will not have the lock in it, and you can tell by how and where the holes are drilled through. So I'm about to demonstrate that right here. The lock goes on this side, and you'll see that that is the side that has the actual blade on it. That is very important. So here's a close-up. I've already installed one of the handles, as you can see, but basically how I like to set this up is first I put the screw that the other screw nests into through the bottom part of the handle, and as you can see, that just slots right through there. And then I put one ball bearing ring, I guess I'll call it, and then I throw the actual brass pivot on there, and that's what the blade will actually pivot around, and the blade actually, that nests right inside of the blade itself. So you don't actually rotate around the screw, you rotate around that little brass pivot, which is actually very nice because it gives it a very smooth motion. So then after that, you put another ball bearing ring on top, and you then put the next handle on and just screw it in. Now you need to actually apply tension with one of your hex wrenches to the back and tension to the front, which I actually have a bit of a hard time doing right here. So I'm just going to dissolve through and show you me actually completing it. The thing is, this has already had thread lock on it, so it's a bit tight, and I just have a hard time seating it at first. So here I am again. As you can see, I do finally have it in place there, and I managed to get it. Then I just pick it up after I tighten it as much as possible without it spinning around. I pick it up and I seat one of the hex wrenches, a quite large one, in the back into the nesting screw. I might pick one that is slightly too large at first here. So you just basically apply tension to the back with that one screw, and then tighten it with a very, very small hex screw in the front. I'm not giving you the size of screws because this has changed for me with every blade I've actually built. So you're just going to have to figure it out yourself. The real key is to just have a lot of different choices. Hex screws are pretty cheap. You can pick them up for $5 to $10 at any given hardware store. As you can see, it's nice and tight there. Later you'll want to tighten this and adjust it to your own preference. I actually prefer very little play in the blade itself, so I tend to tighten it quite a bit. The next step is to install everything else. Mostly everything is pretty easy at this point, so I'm just going to show you how to install the spring lock. So as you can see there, I already have one of the spacers screwed into one side. It's fairly easy to do. It's just a regular hex key. As you can see on the other side, I accidentally have it off camera, but it's just a hex key to screw in. So then you take the spring that comes with the spring lock and you slot it into a hole on the back of the spring. So now the spring and the spring lock are attached. Then you take the other loop of the spring lock and put it over the spacer. And there you have it. Essentially now all you do is you close the handle up and insert the second hex screw. Unfortunately my hands are slightly in the way here, but again it's fairly simple to just put it in and tighten it up, as you can see. And then the spring latch is actually attached. Now all that's left is to actually lock it into place. So for this there's a special screw, this long black one, which I actually recommend putting some gun oil on because in my specific case it squeaked when I got it, but that's no fault of the screw, that's just the fault of it being unoiled. So I would highly recommend actually throwing some sort of lubrication on that. Something that won't get gunked up over time. And that you just screw in with a regular hex screw as well. You don't actually need a backing for this one because the designer of this knife has actually made it so that it just screws right into the handle. So as you can see, it is now tight. Trying to get a couple more screws in there. My hex key of the Canadian sizes, I think this one's the Canadian one, is actually a bit loose, so sometimes hard to screw things in. So as you can see, as you can't see, it's just screwed in back there. And now it works. If I were to close it, which this is actually quite a difficult angle to close at, and then I squeeze it, it will spring open. And that's the spring latch, very easy to install. Everything else is just your standard screw, screwed in from one side, screwed in from the other. Hold it still. The final step is to adjust the tension and add thread lock. This is actually a fairly tricky step, and you can screw it up pretty badly if you do it wrong. So here I have all my keys already. I have my sizes selected. It's important to do that beforehand, especially if you want like a very, very tight fit. And I don't like much play in my blade, so I tend to enjoy a tight fit. You need to have your thread lock ready. To my left there, you can't really see it, but I have some paper towel as a place to put the thread lock and a place to wipe off any spare thread lock that I happen to get on the screws. You don't want to put too much thread lock or else you can really gunk up the system, and you really don't want any of that to get elsewhere. So first things first, take out whichever screw you want to adjust. And of course this is going to take me a little while, so sit back, be patient. So I end up losing my grip on the hex key there. And very fortunately, if you use one of these multi-key systems, the butterfly knife can actually just balance really nicely on the key while you put the thread lock on and prepare it. So you just kind of turn the handle until the thread lock comes out. In my case, it takes a fair amount of time because apparently I loosened it a lot. Then you always get more than you need. So you put it on and you roll it around. And then I see how there's quite a bit of extra on there already. Let me move it back over here. Quite a bit of extra. So I like to take a piece of paper towel and just kind of wipe it off. Not very hard, just a bit. Just roll it so that you get most of the excess off. Then you put it on and you tighten it really quick as you can, which unfortunately for me is not that quick. So you should have kind of before this memorized the tension you like it at, or the feel of the end result of the screw that you like it at, because that's where you want to stop. You can loosen or tighten a bit, but this stuff does dry and you don't want to be moving it too much after the fact. So get it to the tension that you want, test it, and if it works, then keep it there. So, as you see, I actually need a tiny bit of effort to open up the blade, which I like. I'm testing it there by swinging it around a bit. Unfortunately, the camera's too zoomed in, so you can't really see it. But the tension is quite nice. So now there's one last step if you have this specific type of locking mechanism, which is a, I forget what it's called now. Nope, can't remember. But it's a different type of like pivot mechanism, and it's quite a good one. You have these tiny little bolts that screw into the back of the screw that's a hole all the way through. And you can actually put those in and tighten them all the way, and they'll rub up against the screw that you just tightened and lock it in even further. Unfortunately, I put it in the wrong side here. So, time to fast forward till the end. So after you're done all this, you'll have yourself a perfectly functional butterfly knife. Congratulations, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider checking out the website www.butterflyknifekits.com. The link will, of course, be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.